Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today for this release webinar for the PowerShell Monitoring MP. My name is Richard Benwell, founder and product architect here at Squared Up, and I'll be joined today by my colleague Matthew Long. Before we get going, I'd also like to say we like this to be a two-way conversation. If you're joining us live and not watching a replay, do please use the chat window on the GoToWebinar tooling. We'll see those questions and answers come in. Our technical team are also online to answer any questions you have, so please do engage with us as we go through this webinar. If you are interested in PowerShell and System Center Operations Manager, you are most definitely in the right place. We have some great news for you. What we're going to do in terms of the agenda is dive straight in. Within hopefully the first 10 minutes, we'll cover off exactly what it is we're talking about today and why it's such a big deal. I'll get then Matthew to take us through a very sort of first look at the management pack, not a deep dive at that stage, just sort of I'm sure you're all keen to see what it does and how it works. And then we'll finish off that with some details around the availability and download. So hopefully within the first 10 minutes, you'll have everything you need to know to get started with this, but then please do stick around because for the second half of the webinar, we have probably another sort of 30 minutes of content. We will do a full rundown of the features in the management pack. Matthew will take us through a sort of full worked example, so lots of details about what you can do with the management pack, loads of good content there. Matthew also wants to say sort of 4 things you must know about this management pack, so go away with just the best practices and sort of the knowledge of some of the caveats there. We will look briefly, just only at the end of the webinar, at putting this all together with Squared Up. This is not a Squared Up demo. This is a management pack demo, so also focus on the management pack until the end there where we'll put Squared Up into the picture. And then we'll finish off with some details around how to get it involved in this community effort. So let's get going. Let's introduce the free PowerShell Monitoring Management Pack. What is it? It's a free SCOM management pack that allows users to create PowerShell-based monitoring from within the SCOM console. No MP authoring required. It's completely free. In fact, it's so free, it's open source. That's what we mean by free. Both it's freely downloadable from our website, but also the source for the management pack is available on GitHub, and it will be supported via the community. The management pack itself is not all original content. It's based on actually an example management pack by Wei Hao Lim. If you don't know Wei, he's a Microsoft Premier Field Engineer down in Australia. Go check his blog out. Just Google Way Out there and you'll find his blog. Loads of good content about the SCOM console, OMS, and many other topics. So Way sort of originally had an example management back there, and we reached out to him to see whether we could extend this and take this sort of much further and make this a fully fledged management pack. Just to be super clear, it has no dependency on Squared Up. As I say, this webinar will be focused very much on the management pack. This is available to everyone with SCOM, and I hope everyone with SCOM will learn about this management pack and get it installed in their environment. Essentially, it adds PowerShell wizards to the SCOM console authoring tab. So this is a management pack that both extends the underlying modules used by SCOM, but also extends the SCOM console with new UI. You can use those wizards to create new monitors, rules, and tasks, and Matthew will take us through that in some detail later. And essentially, everywhere you see VB script, there will be PowerShell script. So no more VB script, bye-bye 1998, hello 2017. Why is this such a big deal? Hopefully you'll probably already know, but I wanted to sort of emphasize some of the kind of key points here. PowerShell is and has been for a long time a key tool in the arsenal of every Windows-based IT pro. So for many years now, IT pros have learned how they can automate everything, sort of have everything under their control. Obviously make their boss pretty happy. They're doing their work, but essentially they're doing it via scripts. And that, of course, leaves time for those other sort of important projects around the office. That's everyone in the Windows world, except, of course, the poor SCOM administrator who, gosh, if you have been struggling with VB script, you have my sympathy. I mean, it's been surprising the number of SCOM administrators who have fed back to us that they do know a bit of VB script enough to extend SCOM. Now PowerShell is in your hands as well. Now, as well as opening up the sort of PowerShell world to SCOM administrators, I think what's really important here is because other sort of Windows-based specialists have already had access to PowerShell, they will have a wealth of health checks and recoveries probably already written in PowerShell. They're probably already automating some level of monitoring or recovery themselves using PowerShell. But of course, that's done outside of SCOM. Now with the PowerShell Management Pack, you can get your colleagues fully engaged with SCOM. You can take everything that they have done and want to do and sort of involve SCOM in that picture. And we'll talk about that towards the end of the webinar as well. So hopefully you'll see that this really is both a godsend for you as a SCOM administrator, but also how this is going to make SCOM appear, I think, very differently to your colleagues within your IT organization. All right, that's all the intro I really wanted to do. Apart from, before we just see the demo, we have provided a preview management pack out to sort of a very sort of limited audience, and just sort of give you a flavor of the feedback. Hopefully you're sort of feeling the same about this as well. Here's a great example of someone wanting to go and extend SCOM with PowerShell, couldn't face the idea of having to work around XML and sort of dig down in the authoring side of SCOM. So thanks for making this available. It came just at the time I needed it. You know, this SCOM administrator was actually under pressure to add in some additional diagnostics and recoveries. The PowerShell management pack made that trivial. General response here, just love it. That's going to be a pack in my default set, and we hope that is true for everyone on this audience, but sort of for all of the SCOM ecosystem. We really want everyone to see this as just a default pack. It should probably be in the product, but it is now available as an extension to the product. And my favorite quote, hopefully a lot of you are sort of feeling this as well. You might not quite be filled with tears of joy, but you're darned close. So let's, with that build up, hand over to my colleague Matthew, who's going to actually just give us a very quick, just a sort of couple of minute intro into what this management pack looks like in the console and what it can do.
Okay, thank you very much, Richard. No sort of build up there. I'm sure this is going to be all fine. Okay, so what I have here is a PowerShell script. Okay, this is actually nothing rocket science in this one. It's going to check for the installed software based on add remove programs entries. So I'm just going to hide this for each. And essentially, this is nothing SCOM specific. Okay, look at some registry keys, parse the data there, and figure out what's applicable, what should be added, and what's like a system file instead, and then print out the results to the screen. So this is just a script that may be floating around in your organization already. Now, let's say I want to run this on lots of servers. I want to run this and potentially there's updates occurring to it. So does everyone have the same version? And I want to make it really, really easy for people who are in the NOC, maybe not as skilled with PowerShell, to be able to actually get the results from this that they might need during an incident or an outage. What I can do now with this management pack is I can just copy this script and go into my SCOM console. And in the authoring tab, if I go to tasks, right click and say create a new task. Previously, I could run a command or I could run a VB script. Now I have run PowerShell script as an option. I'm going to choose a management pack to put this into. Hit next and give this a task name like list installed software. I could put a description in there to say what the script does, but I'm fine with leaving that empty for the moment just to be quick. Give it a name. Installed software. This name is the name that's going to get run by the file on disk, so helpful to know what it is if it shows up in any event logs. Paste it in my script, hit create, and now that script's going to be saved into my management pack. That management pack gets distributed out to all my agents. So this script is now available on every system in my environment. That means I can run it on boxes in the DMZ without having to worry about remoting capabilities there. I can run this in environments where potentially my NOC team don't have any permissions, so they wouldn't normally be able to log on and run this, but now via the SCOM action account, they're able to do that. There you go. There's the task showing up there. If I go to my monitoring tab, let's go and find a computer, and I'll be able to execute this everywhere. And because it's in one place, it's really easy to update. I can just go into that task, right-click, edit, and update the script if I need to, so no worrying about sort of versioning. So there's my box, and assuming it's downloaded it fast enough, there's list installed software. Hit run. Wait for the task now. This is always the killer part, waiting for SCOM. There we go. Nice and simple.
Great. Thank you very much, Matthew. So that's it. It's as easy as that. SCOM is now fully PowerShell enabled. That was just a flavor. Matthew's going to do some sort of deeper dive demos in just a second, but hopefully that just gives you an indication of how simple it is and how native it feels as well. So everywhere where you'd sort of typically be faced with entering a VB script, you can now enter in a PowerShell script, and it makes it very, very, very simple. Matthew didn't show there, but it is just a management pack. I think we want to make this clear as well. Although it has a very native feel, all you have done previous to this demo is import that management pack that adds in the necessary modules and extends the SCOM console. So all through standard management pack extensions to SCOM. So there is the management pack. sitting right there. Thank you very much, Matthew. We'll come back to you in a second. Let's just get the PowerPoints back up. So really, that's all I wanted to show you in the first 10 minutes, and just wanted to sort of finish off then with availability and download. I'm sure you're all keen to know when and where you can get your hands on this. In terms of availability, it's available right now. You'll find that on our download site. So head over to download.squaredup.com. There's a section for management packs. You will find the PowerShell Monitoring Management Pack available for download right now. There's no sign up, no email address required. Just hit that download, and it's a sealed management pack ready for import into SCOM, and you can go do what Matthew's just done, hopefully just in a few minutes' time. So there you go. That's all you need to know to get started. The last thing I wanted to say before we then go into sort of a deeper dive, and as I say, do stick with us, is just around the kind of community element of this management pack. It is provided completely free and available open source on GitHub, and we'll talk about that in the second half. There are documentation and samples available that's been put together and put on GitHub as well. It does mean there's no direct support from Squared Up, so you won't be able to come in at support@squaredup.com and get support for the management pack, but no fears. The community and Community Answers is here to help. We will be maintaining and providing, our input into this management pack and use of this management pack through the community. So your first place port of call should always be community.squaredup.com. That's already a great repository for discussions, not just around Squared Up, but around SCOM, OMS, and related technologies. So if you haven't already joined that community, do that today. And that is where hopefully you'll find answers and be able to share much information about this management pack. So with that, we're going to close off the first half and move on to the second half of this webinar. So we're going to take maybe another 30 minutes or so where we'll do a deep dive. I do really encourage you to stick around. Really what we've just shown there is a very, very sort of short example. There's a lot more to learn and a lot more kind of we want to tell you and sort of fill out the picture of this management pack. Matthew will be doing sort of most of the talking and the demos in this half of the webinar. So I'll just kind of intro each piece, but sort of otherwise I'll hand over to Matthew. So I guess Matthew will start off with a full feature list. What does this management pack do? You just showed one example there, but can you take us through everything that's on the list?
Sure. So what the management pack actually does is provides the templates or GUI for the templates in the SCOM console. So it's leveraging effectively everything that SCOM could already do, but now actually giving you a way of graphically doing it in the SCOM console. So we've added templates for pretty much everything that you had VB script for, and a couple of extra templates that weren't previously there. The sort of high-level hitters really are 2 and 3 state unit monitors. So this is something that Wei originally did with his management pack. So we sort of started off with that foundation and put those unit monitors in. We've extended it a little bit with some nice-to-have features. So when you create the monitor by default, there's already a script in there that kind of explains what you're actually doing, and the expression sort of screens, which I'll show you in a bit. They've already pre-populated as well. So you have a nice worked example already in the console. So pretty much everyone should be able to get to grips with that rather than actually having to still know some MP authoring stuff. So if you want to have a 2 or 3 state unit monitor, you're covered. And we've got alerting rules. Those are in there as well. So run a script, on an interval. And if there's a problem, fire out a rule alert. Got that. We can do event and performance collection as well. And because SCOM doesn't actually care about Windows performance counters, it just cares about performance data. We could now collect events or performance from anything. That could be from web resources that we can script against, or that could be against our VMware environment, or that could be against literally anything we can run PowerShell from and get a metric or something that looks close to or could be formatted as an event. We've also replicated the scheduled timed rules. So you can say, I want to run this PowerShell script on a timer. SCOM isn't really like a job automation engine, but if you've been using it for that functionality, we've got you covered anyway. And there's also a user request for some feedback we had on the TP. There's also an event-triggered script rule there as well. So this is if event ID, blah, blah, blah shows up, I want to be able to run a PowerShell script. Well, now you can do that. So now you can start responding to events in your environment and automate those with your scripts as well using SCOM. And finally, there's an agent task, which is great for remediation actions. So run this on this particular agent, run this script and list information or make changes. And we've even supported diagnostics and recoveries as well. They're not necessarily that popular in SCOM. You either use them or you don't, but we've also got options for that too. So now you can start automatically responding to monitored issues and either troubleshooting and gathering further information, or automatically fixing those issues. And that's great when you've got sort of a NOC who are running 24 hours a day. You're not there 24 hours a day, and they need to be able to do some of the tasks that you can actually cover off. Someone's already asked us in the questions, but we support anything that the target system supports in terms of PowerShell. So what that means is what happens is PowerShell gets run on that system, and it's whatever version of PowerShell on that system. Whatever modules are installed on that system get executed. So there's nothing special there. So if you've got some boxes that are PowerShell v2 and some boxes that are v4, the v4 scripts work on the v4 systems, the v2 scripts work on the v2 systems. So when you're authoring for this, if you're planning on writing scripts that run everywhere, you will need to keep the minimum version of PowerShell in your mind when you're authoring this, or decide actually, we're just going to just use an override and disable this content so it's not available on boxes that don't have PowerShell. Remember, with Server 2016, PowerShell is now a requirement for all of your servers. So hopefully for those of you who are still running 2003 everywhere, you might need to start thinking about upgrading. And you can install PowerShell on the down-level versions of Windows Server anyway. So you can, if you need that script to run everywhere, you can go and take that step should you need to. The scripts can also, as input arguments, reference any object properties. So if you've got a class in SCOM that's discovered some key properties that you need as inputs to this script, that can be played into the script automatically when the script runs. So that's great for, again, this script I write once, it runs everywhere. We can also take in overridable values. So let's say you have a script where you've got a threshold that'll be the case in most places, but on one particular server it needs to be higher, or someone didn't install that piece of software to the same path on all the systems. You can pass that into the script as an override, and then we'll change it on that one system as you need to. So it's really flexible, and we've really sort of kept the SCOM admin and the operations teams in mind here with creating this.
Great, thanks, Matthew. And so I guess what we'll see next is a lot of those concepts in action. So you showed us a very brief example of the management pack in the first part, but now you have a number of demos lined up. Let's hope that the SCOM console is playing ball today and we get through all of them. So Matthew has a whole set of examples, I think, probably to inspire a lot of these uses, hopefully covering off most of those different sort of uses you saw there in the full feature list. So I'll hand over to Matthew, and I guess also, Matthew, what we've done is put this in a bit of context in terms of looking at a particular application and how you might want to monitor that application with PowerShell. So over to you, Matthew.
Okay, cool. So the scenario here actually is might be familiar to some of you, but I'm sure everyone can get their heads around this. Let's imagine that you've got a publishing system. So you're in print media, or perhaps you're a retailer and you're taking samples, or you're a packaging warehouse and you're taking in designs from clients, looking at these massive image files for packaging and then printing those out. Layouts are huge files these days, gigabytes to terabytes in size, and any backlogs in processing these can have real dire consequences really quickly. We've all heard the phrase sort of "stop the presses." Let me tell you, when someone shouts "stop the presses," if it isn't because a new headline like "nuclear war" has started, someone's about to lose their job, because you cannot have that sort of thing happen. And a really common requirement that these sort of shops have is, these servers are processing these job files. If a service stops or this starts backing up, all these files start appearing on disk, and when that gets full, we have a massive problem. So application admins typically have written all these scripts already to monitor this sort of stuff, or clear out the files, or try and find stuck jobs in the queue. But that only works when they're sat there at their desk. So we need to get this automation in SCOM 24/7, so that as soon as this happens, we can then be aware of what's going on and fix it before it becomes a big issue and before the business really has a massive impact and a massive outage. So the solution here really is, let's use SCOM to do that. Now, classically, that would have involved using SCOM MP authoring to do this, because we have VB script, but we don't actually have the ability to write PowerShell for this. So your application team come in, they say, hey, I've got these scripts to do this, and you say, can you rewrite it for me, please, because I can't support this. Or it's on you to do it, and now you're spending late nights trying to work out how to talk to something that's got a PowerShell module, but there's nothing in VB script to help you work with this. So what we're going to do is use the SCOM console. We're going to take the scripts they've already written, tweak them slightly so they work with SCOM, and then drop them into monitors, rules, and some remediation tasks as well. So using the MP, we're going to create a monitor to confirm that job processing is occurring. So these files are being created on disk, they move through certain folders, and they disappear off again when they're handed over to the next server. Let's ensure that process is actually happening. We'll use some rules to collect performance statistics, because invariably when you say, there's too many files in this queue, it's backing up, immediately people want to see a graph that shows what that's been doing over time. So we'll make sure we can actually collect that. And then we're going to add a diagnostic task in to give further detail. Okay, this queue's backing up. What's actually in that queue? Can we see details? Perhaps we can then start targeting jobs to remove. and a remediation task as well. So look, if it's all going wrong, we need to reset. Let's purge all the queues out from a single click from the SCOM console. This would have been pretty tricky before. Now it's actually a piece of cake. Now, if the application teams have authoring rights, they could actually create and maintain this stuff themselves. They've got access to the authoring tab. They can go in, right-click, create a new monitor, drop their script in. We tried to make this as easy as possible. So hopefully this isn't all on you as the SCOM guy anymore. You can start pushing this out and getting your teams really on board and engaged with SCOM. So when there is an outage and someone says, why wasn't this monitored? It's not your fault. They're the ones who haven't enabled monitoring for their own system. And finally, we're going to have to make some minor changes to the script. So for things like tasks, where it just prints out results to the screen, no changes required. Get this from your application teams, drop them straight into SCOM. But rules and monitors need to report data to SCOM using a particular object. It's the MOM script API. It's named from back in MOM 2005, the old days. But that basically provides an interface that lets SCOM actually process that sort of state and performance data. And task, diagnostics, and recoveries report data by writing it to the SCOM console. And there's a little trick I'm going to show you there to make sure that the output tends to look as best as possible, because one annoying caveat of SCOM is that it always prints everything out as 80-column lines. So that can be kind of annoying if your output's supposed to be on a nice wide screen. Okay, so that's basically our solution and our scenario covered. Let's jump straight into the demos.
I'll start praying for the SCOM console now.
Yeah, no, it's always a blast of the past doing demos with the SCOM console instead. Okay, so here I am in the SCOM. So first thing I need to do, that monitor I need to create. Let's go to the authoring tab. So remember, I've imported the MP already. That was all I had to do as a prerequisite for that. Now I want to go and create my monitor. So I go to monitors. I need to scope the view here to whatever object in SCOM I want the monitor to run against. So in this case, I have a server that's the job processing server. So I'm just going to target it at all Windows computer. I'll create it disabled by default, so it isn't going to run everywhere. And then I can enable it via an override. But if you did have a monitor or a script you're like, this should run on every server, that would be appropriate. Likewise, if you had a management pack for your product and you wanted to extend its monitoring, you would then go and add that. So Exchange, go and find the Exchange role that you wanted to add, right-click and create there instead. But let's create a new availability monitor for my Windows computer. So create unit monitor. Now, for those of you who've done this before, you'll be used to seeing this screen, and it's asking you for, are you trying to use SNMP or WMI or other items. If you expand scripting, you'll now find a new PowerShell-based folder here. And under that, we've got our 2 and 3 state monitors. They've been flagged as community as well, so you kind of get a sense of where they come from. So if you see anything in here with brackets community on it, under a PowerShell-based folder, you know where that came from. It's our management pack. Let's select that. We get a description here of what it does. And a little reminder here as well that the alert settings on the alert tab aren't necessarily set correctly. So maybe you might need to adjust those. Don't just hit next on the screen. I'll need to pick a management pack as before. So let's go and pick, here we go. Hit next. So the first thing I want to know is the name of the monitor, and that will show up in Health Explorer. So let's call this Job Processing Health. And obviously, I'd normally give this a description to make it clear what this management pack does. I don't want this running everywhere, so I'm going to uncheck monitor is enabled. Otherwise, it will run on every single Windows computer. That's not appropriate here. I hit next. How often do I want it to run? Let's say every 5 minutes. Resist the urge to make it every 5 seconds. That's not going to scale very well. And here I've got now my script tab. This is where it's asking, can you now drop in my script? Now let's go to my script editor and go and grab my first demo script. So this is the script here. Basically, that monitors the size of a folder and outputs the number of files. This was given to me by my application admin. What I've had to do is make 1 or 2 tweaks to it in order to get it to work with SCOM. So the actual body of the script is the same, but I've had to put in that sort of interface that lets SCOM talk back to this script and receive outputs. So the first thing you have to do is you have to create an instance of the SCOM API object. Now that line, you'd have to memorize that. Whenever you use the template to create a new monitor or rule or anything else, that line's already in the script for you. Let me just jump back to PowerShell, back to SCOM console for a second. You see there's already a dummy script that's been placed in with lots and lots of comments. So you've already got that here. You can see, oh look, there's that line. I'm already good. Jump back to my script. So I have my SCOM object. I need to create what's called a property bag. If I do Control F and bring up property bag, you can see where that's used in the script. Basically, a property bag just contains data that's sent back to SCOM. So that's what we're going to use. Then we have some global variables, so the folder path and the sort of default state of the monitor. And we have some thresholds as well. I could pass these in as parameters to the script and then make it overridable. But since I can edit this at any time in the SCOM console, I'm going to leave these hard baked into the script itself. and just edit them there if I need to. And then basically I have the body of the script. This is the part that the admin already sent me. In this case here, it was just test if a folder path exists, check the size to make sure it's under a certain threshold. And then what I've done is added these property bag statements that you can see in here. So property bag, add value. So the first set just adds it dependent on the size. So if it's a gigabyte, format it appropriately, because bytes is kind of an annoying value to work with. And at the bottom, then it just adds in those values. And you can see at the end here, the important point is that it adds in those values and then returns it back to SCOM. Now, this line here, state value for monitor, is really important. What this does is basically takes our calculation that's inside the script, is it over or under our threshold, and then reports it back. And all you have to do is call add value. The first value is basically the name of the key property that should appear in the data center SCOM. That needs to be unique in this script. So in this case, state, it doesn't appear anywhere else. And then the second parameter is just whatever variable or data you want to pass back. So here it's a string, over or under, but we've got, counts and performance information, other things here as well. This last line, send output to SCOM, this is the equivalent of just returning it to the SCOM console. I could put PowerShell console, sorry. So I could put write output here as well. Property bag. That would be exactly the same. There's no actual difference there. I just don't like to have that extra needless bit in there. So let's copy this and paste it into my script block here. Now, unfortunately, this is a lovely plain text editor here, so I would recommend use a different editor like the PowerShell ISE or Visual Studio Code or the editor of your choice to actually edit the script, test it, and then you can just drop it in here when you're done. Like I said, if you wanted to pass these in as overridable input parameters, you can do so by hitting the parameters button, and then this dialog will appear on my other screen. And then you can then fill in parameters. You can also pass in values from the target object. So if this script required, let's say, the Active Directory SID for this particular box, or its name, or the number of processes it had, I can click in this little wizard here, and that will insert a parameter replacement that says, at runtime, replace that value with the number of physical processes in this case. So any knowledge that you have in SCOM, asset IDs, or information you've already gathered from other management packs can now be leveraged in this script too. Okay, that's fine. I don't need that for this script, so I'm going to hit cancel. I hit next. This is the sort of the final sort of SCOMmy bit it's going to ask. This is a little bit key. This monitor basically runs a script. A script returns data, and then SCOM has to know how to map that data onto a healthy or unhealthy health state. That's what monitors do. So it's asking me here for, based on the return data, what is the unhealthy expression? How do I know that this result means that it's unhealthy? So what you have to do is reflect over that property bag that came out and tell it what value in that property bag to pick out, and then what actually needs to be set. Now, this isn't automatic. It just conveniently lines up with the values in my script. So I'll show you how this should be done for you guys. Go to script, find whatever value that you're returning in your property bag that's actually key to your monitor's health state. In this case, it's the state value there. Copy that. And my unhealthy expression here will be that this state value, so I would just replace name equals state here with whatever property I've got. Maybe it's service status, or maybe it's application running, or whatever it is I want to test. And then on my operator, I'd pick something appropriate. So in this case, I'm going to say, because this monitor can return multiple states, that it's unhealthy if the state value does not equal, in this case, the text over threshold, because that's what my script returns. If I scroll up, when everything's fine, it returns under threshold. Sorry, let me grab that. There you go. So if the state property does not equal under threshold, then that means everything's unhealthy. So now if the folder's not found, or the script errors out, or whatever else, the monitor will go red. Otherwise, my healthy expression, state equals under threshold, everything's good, the script's reporting that it's healthy. And you can add in via the insert button here any amount of logic that you like. So you can add in multiple clauses, ors, ands, criteria, go nuts. Hopefully a lot of you have seen this before with like group membership rules, or if you've used these templates before, so this shouldn't be too unfamiliar for you. Let's go next. We've got the health here. So this allows me to map whether I want this to be a critical or healthy, critical or warning health state. Obviously with a 3-state monitor, it's already filled in for you, but in this case, this is a 2-state. I want this to be critical because this is a really big problem if it occurs. And then finally on my alerts tab, it's going to ask me, do I want this monitor to alert? Now, if you were on our coffee break yesterday, you'll know that actually, yes, monitors should probably always raise alerts when they go unhealthy. Otherwise, no one's going to get notified that it's gone on. There's a problem. So if I hit generate alert to this monitor, and then it'll ask me generate an alert when this monitor is in a critical health state or warning health state. If you use the 3-state monitor, you will need to update this to be warning or critical state. The drop-down doesn't automatically pick the right option for you there. So for me, it's critical. And I would say set the severity from, rather than critical, set it to match the monitor's health, because it's very annoying having a critical alert for a warning monitor. So just set that to match monitor's health state, and then set this value here to whatever the monitor actually raises. And then you need to put in an alert name and alert description. You can use in your alert description any values that came back out from your script. So for example, let's say in my alert description, I also want to say, well, how many files were actually in this? How many jobs are now stuck? There's my files property there. So I'm going to copy that. Go to configure alerts, hit the little ellipses. Let's put this down at the bottom and put the.
While you're doing that, Matthew, I know it's hard to type and talk. So the really kind of key property that was returned there was state. So that allows you to change the monitor state. But all those other properties are stored for every monitor state change in SCOM. So those properties are both sort of visible when you look at the Health Explorer or the alert, but also as you're showing here, those properties can be used then within the alert description and so on. So as well as returning state, it is often very useful to return some information, some diagnostics around why that state was unhealthy.
Thank you very much, Richard. So I've used the data button there to import a parameter replacement expression. Basically, this does is data context property will get changed out when the alert's raised with a value. In this case, it's my files value from the output data, but I can also use the target button here to, again, bring in any values to the machine. So I probably would say something like, this computer, and then the name of the computer, or whatever other values I might need depending on my class. There's my alert description done. And now if I hit create, it will go away and SCOM will spin for a little while and create that monitor. That monitor gets put into a management pack, distributed out to all my systems. Now, to save you waiting 5 minutes while the agent's done at the management pack and the script starts up, I've actually already created this. So there we go. Let's go and show you what this looks like in the SCOM console. So if I go into my monitoring tab, and another thing I should point out, I've also, because this was this is created disabled by default, you see it's grayed out, I've also gone overrides, overridden the monitor, and then turned it on for my specific server, or if you wanted to, you could turn it on for a group as well. So don't forget to do that step as well if you disabled it by default. Okay. Let's go down to the monitoring tab and find my machine. Now, here we go. I can see it's already flagged up. I open the Health Explorer, which is also on my other screen. Here we go. There's my job processing folder contents monitor. So you can see, look, as Richard was saying, the other data has been returned in the context. So everything I put in that property bag has come back. So I can see the folder path, I can see the number of files in, the total size, and because I had it format an actual human readable size as well, it's now nice and easy to figure out whether I need to take action or not, because that's kind of a hard number to work with. Okay, so that's a monitor. You can imagine what a 3-state monitor would look like. It's basically the same thing. Let's actually move on to the sort of second piece of our demo here, which is great. Now we can see when there's too many jobs in this file, but I can't actually get any history on this. So now if I want to graph this, I'm still stuck. Well, no, we've actually created a whole bunch of rule templates as well. So let's go to rules. Again, create a new rule. So before you would have had performance-based and you just had poor old VB script or shell script. Now you'll notice there's PowerShell based all over the place in here. And if I expand PowerShell based under collection, I have a performance collection rule, which functions much the same. So let's go and fill this in. Next, it's going to ask me basically a lot of the same things. So collect job folder processing stats. Again, I'm going to disable it, so I don't want it to run everywhere. This is only valid on a single machine, and I'll override it and turn it on my box. Collect this every 5 minutes. And again, resist the temptation to collect performance every 5 seconds, unless you want to have a terabyte size SCOM database. And then once again, I need to paste in my script. Now, in order to make sure this actually performs properly, and I'll talk about this a bit in a later slide, I can actually use the same script that I've already written, the one I used previously, and paste that in here. And the reason for that is because it already returns a count of a number of files. Now, this means two things. One, I only have to maintain one script. That's quite nice. It's a good day when I can write one script and go home early. The second thing is that SCOM will actually detect that this is exactly the same script, and therefore it'll only run it once and replay the data to both workflows. So if I had this script running as a performance collection rule and as a monitor, it runs once, does all its number crunching once, and then SCOM just pours over the data afterwards. So that is the absolute key to getting your scripts to scale. So do not forget to do this. It's really, really important. So if I hit next on this now, so this script is the same as before. It's got a property bag value called files and has a property bag value as well called the size. So let's grab my files text there. On the next screen, the performance mapper is basically saying, okay, great, I've got this property bag that comes out of my script. How do I actually turn that into performance data? Because performance data has an object, a counter, an instance, and values. And the way I do that is on this screen here. Now, the object and counter must be static. Resist the temptation to do something like say, okay, I'm going to actually make this dynamic using this ellipsis picker here, which has gone off screen. There we go. Oh, I'll make the counter name based on the computer names. It's individual for each computer, or it's dynamic depending on the database it's pointing at. Don't do this. If you do this, you will have a lot of problems with your SCOM data warehouse because SCOM doesn't actually support this. So it's a bit frustrating that Microsoft have put this in the wizard when it shouldn't really be there. So make this static. So this could be like job queue. The counter here is number of files. If you're collecting multiple instances with your script, then that's supported as well. You just need to show us where in the property bag that instance name is available from. And what you'd do is you'd return multiple property bags. So if you had, let's say, 5 disks you're collecting information for, you'd return 5 property bags, and it would have like a name property for like C, D, E, F, and that would be referenced here. And then your value would then be whatever path to the value or metric inside your data. So in this case, it's my files. I don't have an instance here. There's only one folder being returned, so I'm just going to remove that here, so it's just blank. And then I hit create, and my rule will go out and start creating.
Can I just ask a question, Matthew, that came in via the chat window, put you on the spot?
Yep.
I thought it was really interesting what you're saying around the scripts being the same, and hence SCOM detects they're the same, performs cookdown, essentially, to make sure it's executed only once. I presume that also means, though, if you came back into this wizard and tweaked that script in one,
and not the other.
Yeah, not the other, you would, they're sort of a little bit fragile there in terms of making sure those scripts are the same.
Yeah, that's exactly correct. And also, cookdown only functions properly, and I'll talk about this again later in the slide, but it also only works correctly if all the same input parameters, all the input parameters are the same as well. So if you've got like 5 different folders being monitored and they've all got slightly different paths, that's not going to work. I will go into this in more detail, but this is an important sort of thing to keep in mind when you want this stuff to scale, especially on multi-instance boxes. Anyway, again, I'm not going to hit create because if I did that, you'd have to wait 5 minutes for the rule to fire up. So instead, I'm going to go and I'll tell you what, actually, I'll leave this for you, Rich, to show later off in your squared up demo because performance counters look a little bit ugly in SCOM, so I'll leave that as the sales pitch later for squared up. Okay, so the final thing is let's put a diagnostic in place. So great, I can now alert and say, oh no, we've got too many files in this queue, it's going to back up soon. But what actually jobs are in there right now? Is this the front page editorial that we're printing out, or is this going to be next week's killer line that's going out? We need to actually know what jobs we're killing before we go and start remediating things. Now, annoyingly, you can't actually create diagnostics and recoveries from the authoring tab because the SCOM console just doesn't expose them there. So what you have to do is go back into your Health Explorer or go and find the monitor in question and go to its properties. So I'm going to show you how to do this from the Health Explorer because it's a bit more visible. Keeps opening on my other screen. So I go to the monitor properties. I go to diagnostic and recovery. Here are the add and edit buttons. So I'm going to add a diagnostic in this case so that when this alert, when this monitor goes unhealthy, actually give me a detailed breakdown of what's in that. Because I might not want to be collecting that information every single time the monitor executes. That's a lot of extra data going into SCOM. But when there's a problem, that's when I want to know at that point what's going on. And this is especially powerful if you've got like flapping alerts where, this keeps happening overnight when no one's around. Well, in the morning, you can't triage it properly, but this diagnostic fires as soon as the health state's detected. So that's a great way of actually making sure that you've gathered that information when it's relevant. Okay, so I've got another script here. This script, because the diagnostic just reports out text information, it's not being used in a rule or monitor, there's nothing special about SCOM in this script. It's just a script. So tasks, diagnostics, and recoveries, no special SCOM objects required in here. It's just a script. In this case, it just walks through and lists out all the details of all the subfolders and their sizes and their file counts. So pretty typical script. I imagine a lot of you have written something very similar yourselves in the past. So let's jump back here. Let's call this list job queue contents. I want it to run automatically on my computer when the monitor is critical. Hit next. And then I can just paste this in here and change this to list job. You don't have to keep changing the file name here. You could leave it all as like myscript.ps1. But when the AV guys come to you and say, we keep seeing these scripts executing randomly in your system, what are they? It's kind of helpful if you can have a name to them. So A, they can see what they are, and B, you're able to diagnose a problem if errors start showing up in the event log saying this script was running and it caused problems. List contents.ps1, I know what that is. Whereas if it's just called every single script called myscript.ps1, that's not really very helpful. So that's why I've named that there. Doesn't really matter what you call it though. And you can see this script actually is very generic. It doesn't have the path baked into it. So I'm going to go parameters and just show you how you could parameterize your script if you wanted to. Let's drag this up. That's really annoying. So I can either just type in here statically. So I'm going to do that. Job queue. That's where my queue is located. So that now will be the default value. But because this parameters block here is what's an overridable, someone could override this for a particular server if, say, they've installed it in the wrong place, just via the standard SCOM override screen. So let's pop that in and hit create. That's now, you can't see it, but it's saying saving on my other screen. So that's now going to get saved. That diagnostic is now available in the Health Explorer. And then whenever that monitor goes unhealthy in the future, here it comes, that diagnostic will now be available and run automatically. And it can also be run on demand as well. And you may have seen this if you looked at other alerts in the SCOM console, the diagnostics listed in the alert text. So then you can click that button and immediately get that context, maybe refreshing it if it was last run 8 hours ago and it's not really relevant to run it now. Okay, still churning a bit. Good old SCOM console. So I think at this point, the last thing I'll just mention quickly is an agent task. So I have a script for that as well. I wanted to remediate the content in the queue here. I could also create an agent task, right-click tasks, and say new agent task. And here's a script that just cleans that up and removes it. So that's fairly obvious. I think by now you've seen that task show up earlier, so it's pretty standard. Okay, so let's jump back to the slides. And there's a few sort of caveats you really have to know about this management pack.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Matthew. There was one comment coming in from the chat around, could you show a rule-based alert, which we don't have time for today, but you'll find that actually everything you've covered there will sort of cover the creation of rules that raise alerts. And if you'd watched our coffee break yesterday, we went into a lot of detail about sort of choosing between monitors versus alerts. So unfortunately, we don't have time to go through everything, but I think probably everything you've covered there, Matthew, does span the different array of types of scripts and the wizards you have.
Yep, actually, it looks exactly the same. It rather than with the monitor, it has two different states. All the alert rule does is say, okay, here's the script content. Now, when do I raise an alert? So it's really easy.
Great. So there are some things you wanted to tell the audience and make sure that when they have this in their hands, they know what they're doing with it. Yeah.
What you want to hear when you've just been told, hey, this is a new thing and it's amazing. The first thing you want to hear is, but here's all the limitations. So I wanted to sort of be honest and upfront about this and make sure that you're aware of what this management pack is good for, but also when perhaps you still need to do some MP authoring and when it won't necessarily fit the bill for you. Okay. So the first thing you must know when you create this, and I've touched on this slightly already, is that the monitor alert defaults aren't desirable. So it doesn't alert by default. When you create a new monitor, you want to turn that on. It has a potentially different severity to the one that your monitor is actually reporting. So your monitor can report, warning or critical, but the alert always is critical. So make sure you change those drop downs and really read through that screen. Don't just go next, complete when you're creating monitors and alert rules. Otherwise, you'll start getting alerts that you really don't want to see. The second thing is that all criteria, so there's expression filter boxes where I was saying dollar data property state must be above or below threshold. Those comparisons are all done as strings. This is an age-old problem. Back from SCOM 2007 had this original problem, and many people have blogged about it already. But they're string, not numeric comparisons. So if your script returns a number, say the number of files there, that will be sorted or compared based on being a string. So for example, the ascending sort order for string versions of those numbers, 1, 11, 111, and 17 is 1, 111, 17, not 1, 17, 111, which means that your script will do all sorts of screwy things when it comes to evaluating health state. That is the reason why in my script, and I'll just show it again, that is the reason why in my monitoring script, I was computing the value here using a less than operator and writing this sort of state value in, just to get around that problem. If you don't want to do that, if you're sort of looking at this and saying, this really hurts my sort of purist sensibilities, what you can do is use the template to create the monitor, export the management pack, open it up, and you can just change the string, the comparison type from string to Boolean or to integer, and then re-import the MP and it'll work fine. Like I said, this has actually been blogged about quite a lot because it's a problem with all of the templates in SCOM, not just these ones, but it's something we'd like to address at some point in the future, but can't today. There's that one. Then there's the cookdown point. So if the same script would be run simultaneous times on the same agent, you must ensure it scales by supporting cookdown. If you go and say, look, against databases, I want to run this PowerShell script, and there's 100 databases on that system, you cannot be running 100 PowerShell scripts every 5 minutes on that system. That's going to cause performance problems. So make sure your script scales. And to do that, the script and its input parameters must be exactly the same. Now, the way you get around this, if let's say, for example, the script needs to know about databases or a particular database to be able to run, is rather than coding it to say, here's a database name, check that database, and then return output. Instead, you have the script discover all databases on the system, regardless of whether they'll be used or not, have it output a property bag for each database, and then in your criteria for that monitor, you can say, okay, find the property bag where the name equals, the value from SCOM, and the result then is healthy or unhealthy, and monitor is appropriate. There's a lot of good resources on Cookdown available, so I can't explain Cookdown in this webinar. It's just there's too little time to do that. But go and do some Google searching. Check out the MP authoring class on the Microsoft Virtual Academy. Look at the Cookdown module specifically, and they'll talk through how to do this stuff. It is possible, but it's very important you get your head around that if the script would run multiple times. If it's once per server, great, don't worry about it. Just ignore that. And then the final thing you must know is if you need validation or distinct overrides with your monitor, then you'll need to create your own module type in an MP. So what that means is, let's say you say for this monitor, I want to be able to override this value and that value and this value and that value. One of them should be a number only. Another one's a Boolean, so it should be a drop down. And I don't want the NOC team to be able to specify a negative number, things like that. You'll need to use MP authoring to create your own module type because all we're doing here is exposing a single overridable parameter. Now that can contain whatever you like, but it's a big long string and you need to use like interpolation and a split to break that out. That's talked about in the MP samples, so take a look at that there if you need to.
Thanks very much, Matthew. We are running a little bit short of time, but I wanted just to raise 2 questions that came in via the chat. And thank you very much for everyone who is on live and putting those questions into the chat window. It's great to get your feedback. One is a big caveat that I'd like to sort of add in here, or a big sort of guidance issue, which is Matthew mentioned around providing your end users, your IT organization with authoring rights. You have to be really careful, obviously, and this is not specific to PowerShell. It'd be specific to VB script and command channels as well. But obviously, if you give all of your users rights to target the Windows computer class, they can run any script on any Windows computer. So that would not be a best practice, I would suggest. Obviously, keep that as a SCOM admin privilege only. The route, the sort of best practice there is to make sure that when you're creating your RBAC settings in SCOM and you're targeting the authoring role, target that at specific classes, not the Windows computer class. So if there are existing specific classes, great. If you want to target the SQL engine, for example, for your DBAs to be able to run arbitrary scripts, great. If you want to target an Exchange server role, so your Exchange administrators can create scripts, great. If you have an application where you don't currently have a class that distinguishes a computer running that application from any other computer, you will need to create that class. As you say, you don't want to default to Windows computer. So that is an extra complication. If you don't already have something that sort of targets that specific application, then look at creating a discovery. Very simple. Maybe just detect a registry key on an application server, create a class based on that registry key existing, and then target your application administrator's authoring rights at that class. So a little bit wordy response, but it is really important that you just don't go, great, I'm going to enable this on all Windows computers. You are in for a security issue there if you do that.
Just to bring up the RBAC for that and just show that.
Okay.
It is worth noting, by the way, though, that the authoring role is the one role that's allowed to have a scope based on instances as well. So you can actually say for this group only, for this particular the authoring rule only.
Okay. Great. And then the one other thing is not really kind of guidance, but a good question that came in is that if people already have the management pack from Way, how does this overlap? Well, they are two distinct management packs. They have two distinct names, so you can just import this management pack alongside. If you want to then migrate any existing monitors and rules and so on over, you can do. Otherwise, they will happily coexist. So thanks very much, Matthew, for all of that guidance. So we have about sort of 10 minutes left. What I will do now is take control of the screen and the keyboard, and I will take us through a quick demo around putting this together with Squared Up. As I say, I'm not going to spend too long on this. If you're not familiar with Squared Up, and I guess there are some of you out there who aren't, go and see what sort of all the excitement is about on squaredup.com. You can get a 30-day free trial. I'm not going to do a sort of sales pitch during the sort of webinar around all of the benefits of Squared Up. Go check that out. We've got a great website and an online demo. So go see what it can do. And I'll give you a sort of a quick flavor in a demo now. Why I wanted to bring Squared Up into the picture is because we're behind Squared Up, the product, and also obviously this PowerShell management pack. And really the reason we're doing that is because you have your IT pros out there, using those same characters as we've seen before, or members of your IT organization. And right now, or previous to Squared Up, certainly there's a very big gap between your IT organization really and SCOM. Maybe they saw some emails come out, maybe they had the odd sort of dashboard that they were looking at, but really there was not a lot of engagement with System Center Operations Manager. With Squared Up in the picture, if you have Squared Up already, hopefully you are really now seeing that engagement and seeing sort of SCOM monitoring roll out to your IT organization. And then the next question that comes up is, okay, now I can see these dashboards, now I have access to these alerts and so on. I want the monitoring I need in the user interface. So sort of the engagement through the user interface drives then much more interest in getting additional monitoring into SCOM. And we've sort of seen that very sort of clearly through our partners and customers. As soon as Squared Up is installed, there's a lot higher interest in what SCOM can do. Can it monitor this? Can it monitor that? Can we get that onto the dashboard? And hopefully now with the PowerShell management pack in the picture, that becomes so much easier to say, yes, I can do. I can now deliver everything out into Squared Up. If you're not already a Squared Up customer, hopefully you'll see the other the other angle from that, which is by putting the monitoring into SCOM using PowerShell. That's great. You've now sort of enabled SCOM to be extended very easily with PowerShell. But really, there's still very low value in that unless you can get the sort of data out. Matthew's shown us that we can do performance rule collection and so on. Your users will want to see the outcome of that monitoring, and for it not to be going into a black hole. So really, together, these are sort of really nice sort of pairing, and they really are all around engaging your IT organization, your users with System Center Operations Manager. So I'm going to just go through a very quick demo, probably just 2 minutes, if I can do it in 2 minutes, and just take the extra monitoring that Matthew added into SCOM and show that through Squared Up. So this is Squared Up. What I'm going to do is dive straight in and start building some dashboards and perspectives around the monitoring that Matthew added in that sort of first section there. So actually, I'm going to drill down into your server, Matthew, and take the example of this being part of a publishing application. So it's kind of a very heavyweight sort of business critical application. First of all, what I'm going to do is look at the software installed, because actually the very first demo you did was to show how you can very easily get a list of every software that's installed on a server. Now, obviously, you could have a log analytics tool installed, and that's collecting all this information 24/7 from every single server. If you don't have that, or if you sort of still want to get an up-to-date view, right now when you're troubleshooting an application of what's installed on a particular server, you can do that through the task that Matthew added in that first section. So I can drill down into any server, click on task here, and I should be able to run list installed software, just execute that, and that will come back. So very similar to what Matthew showed in the SCOM console, hopefully nice and quick, and the results displayed nice and cleanly in Squared Up. Now that's very good. It's a little bit hidden though, that task. So what we can also do now is just go into edit mode, and for this this server dashboard, so sort of a dynamic dashboard that would appear for every server, I'm just going to do the same thing. So I'm going to add in this task and just do list installed software. That's great. Now, by default, Squared Up is expecting this to come back as CSV.
You need to hit the apply button.
Yeah, let's get that running. And then what I want to do is move that to a PowerShell table. Hit next there. And I should be good to go.
Yeah, that should come back.
There you go.
There you go.
Come out of edit mode. And so now that is available on every server, and that probably is something you want available on every server. So by adding it into what we call a perspective, I can now drill down into any server in my environment and instantly see what software is installed. So beyond what just sort of SCOM has discovered, which of course is fairly coarse-grained, IIS is on the server and so on, I can now see specific details of every bit of software that's installed. So that's just a really good example of how just that one very simple script that I think Matthew said was nothing to do with SCOM was available anywhere, can be put into SCOM, and seconds later you have that now available in an HTML5 user interface for every single server you have. What I was going to do as well is now just sort of fill out just one more perspective using some of the other monitoring Matthew added. So let's just put in job processing as a sort of new perspective or a new sort of dashboard for this. I'm just going to demo by showing this against just this one server. If there were a group of servers in this application that I wanted to see this for, I could target that group. So I have a new tab, a new perspective on the server for job processing. What I was going to do is just very simply show a couple of things. One is that monitor. So let's just come into the monitor here, and I should find the monitor that Matthew created. So there it is right at the top there. I obviously can see the alert for it as well if I look at the alerts tab. And the other rule that Matthew added but didn't show in the SCOM console was the fact that it was also not just alerting on a folder containing too many files, but actually also collecting the number of files as a performance metric. And that is a perfect fit with what we can do with Squared Up here. So alongside the health of that monitor, I'm just going to target the same server there.
Folder.
Just do folder. Thanks, Matthew. So folder number of files. And I should see that data come back. So I can now just hit sort of publish on that. And that is now a perspective on the server that's very specific to this application. I'm not expecting to see this on every Windows server, but right now, as an application engineer, I'm supporting this application. I now have all the information I need sort of right in front of me to do that. Now, one last integration I wanted to show was the ability to add in the remediation task. So Matthew showed creating a task there that was going to allow me to clear the queue. So I have all the information I need in terms of sort of visibility and monitoring. We also now just want to add in the remediation. So I'm just going to put in kind of clear queue. Just select the SCOM task that Matthew created a second ago and hit done, and then come out of edit mode. So now on this server, I have the information I need, and I have the ability to clear this queue all through my web browser, or indeed, it just went green. Through my web browser, or indeed my mobile phone if I'm on call but sort of outside of the office. So that's all sort of pieced together with Squared Up. Hopefully, just as that sort of quick demo gives you an idea of really how rapidly now you could work with your application teams, pull that monitoring in, take their scripts, and surface that back out to them through Squared Up. Okay, the very last topic then, just sort of round off, I wanted to talk about sort of the community aspect of this management pack. How do you get support for this management pack? How do you get involved in this management pack? So it is a community management pack. It's provided completely free and open source. As I said, there's that GitHub repo. No direct support from Squared Up. We'll support it through the community. So head over to community.squaredup.com. So that was the slide I showed in the intro there. Just to expand on that a little bit, I wanted to clarify the difference between the GitHub repo and community answers. So the MP is open source under a GPL license, and sitting there in that GitHub repo, we'll be doing our best to maintain that management pack. Of course, we're sort of very happy for other people to contribute as well. Essentially, we can't support your use of that management pack as well. We can't start sort of getting into detailed PowerShell scripts. So if you encounter a problem, if you essentially identify it as a management pack problem, you're hitting a very unusual error, you can really sort of show that even with the simplest PowerShell script, it's failing, or there's something wrong with the UI. Probably best to go to GitHub there and raise that as an issue. And then one of our developers, Matthew himself probably, if you haven't guessed already, is sort of behind the development of this management pack, or maybe one of the community can help out there. If it's really a question around your scripts or best practices or how do you do this, go to community answers. You're going to get a great response. We've just sort of seen a real sort of flood of questions coming in, some great answers being met with those as well. So if in doubt, If that distinction isn't clear, head to community answers, ask that question. That will always sort of surface as a GitHub issue against the management pack if needed. But the real point here is it's not just about you and managing this and your scripts. This really is, the beauty of this management pack is to open up the power of SCOM. Yeah, as I sort of showed earlier, to anyone with those PowerShell scripts. It's not just for you. So really, as an action, please let your colleagues know that SCOM now supports PowerShell. Go and announce that. Go send an email out. Go approach that application team who's been sort of either turning away from SCOM or or sort of being a bit sort of aggrieved that SCOM can't do what it's supposed to do. So go back to your colleagues, tell them that SCOM now supports PowerShell, and get those scripts into SCOM. And hopefully, especially if you see some scripts that are not application specific to your environment, please do share those scripts as well. So the community aspect here is not just the management pack being open source, but really we hope to see a community grow around some great examples. Matthew's kind of kicked it off with some good examples there of what you could do with sort of file and folder monitoring. There must be hundreds of other fantastic ideas out there. Please do share them. So what we'd encourage you to do is add to the samples repository on GitHub. So if you have some new ideas that you'd like to share, put them there, or just post on, start a thread on community answers. Just say, hey, here's a good example. What do people think? And we can also sort of tie that to GitHub. We will be watching out for this. We'll be very sort of active in the community. We'll help sort of promote just anything we think is really kind of great and needs to be shared with the rest of the community. And really the result we want to see is the community helping everyone really exponentially scale their own efforts. We really do not want to see a huge amount of effort being taken in each individual sort of organization by sort of each sort of individual administrator. Let's all sort of share what we can do and all of our lives become a lot easier. If just the whole benefits of sharing is not enough for you, we also are encouraging you with a community leaderboard, so kind of gamifying it a little bit. So you can go sort of head over to Community Answers and see how you're doing with your questions and answers. If the kudos of being top of the leaderboard is still not enough for you, we're even throwing in some prizes. And yes, it's Lego, of course, not whiskey before you ask on the chat window. So really, there's no reason not to get involved. Really, primarily it's around sort of sharing for everyone to benefit from a community. It's something that I think has been lacking sort of a little bit in a classic sort of enterprise space. Hopefully we can start to see a change there, but also engage with community on squaredup.com. Ask those questions about SCOM, OMS, and other technologies, and start to see some rewards as well. So with that, I want to say thank you very much for joining us. We will now turn to the Q&A window on GoToWebinar, and we'll run through those. Hopefully we've sort of answered many of the questions as we go. Matthew and I are online to answer those questions on the chat. We also have our tech team. We'll surface any kind of questions here if there's anything we think we need to share beyond what we've already done. Just to sort of head off with kind of a bit of an FAQ at the end there. Will the slides and webinar recording be made available? Of course, on our blog and probably many other places. And if you are on this webinar, you'll automatically get an email when that's being made available. If I haven't said it enough already, where's the best place to ask questions about this? community.squaredup.com. Can you come to Squared Up to get support for the management pack of your scripts? No, not directly, but we'll be there. You'll sort of see us responding on the community. Can I branch and fork the management pack if I want it to do something different? Of course, help yourself. We'd love to see that, and again, we'd be very supportive of that. So there's just a few questions headed off. I'm going to now go on mute, and I'll take a look at the Q&A, and we'll get back live on the webinar if there's any sort of questions we think we need to head off. Otherwise, we'll just respond individually on the chat. Thank you very much, everyone, for your time today and sort of sticking with us. And I hope you enjoy the new PowerShell Monitoring Management Pack.
Thank you very much, guys.